Any sunshine, it's going to feel pleasantly warm. Temperatures a touch higher than yesterday, highs of around 22 or 23 Celsius. It is going to turn pretty wet as we go through this evening and overnight. We have some rain across northern and eastern parts, and then a swathe of wet weather feeding its way up from the southwest. Could see some heavy bursts as that pushes its way northeastwards across many parts. Because of the cloud and the rain, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, so it's going to be a milder start to the day tomorrow than it was this morning. It is also going to be quite a cloudy and at times wet picture. Most of us will see some rain at times. Showery outbreaks to start off with, and then plenty of showers developing as we go towards lunchtime and the afternoon. Some of these could pack quite a punch. Some torrential downpours are possible, as well as some hail and some thunder. There will be some sunny spells in between the showers though, and in any of these it should still feel warm enough, even though temperatures are down a couple of degrees compared to today. A quick look to Bank Holiday Monday, and after an initially dry start in the east, it's going to be another largely cloudy picture for many. Further outbreaks of showery rain. Again, these could be a little bit heavy at times, but there are some signs that we could see something a little bit drier developing towards western and southwestern parts as we go through the afternoon. Temperatures, though, down a little bit compared to tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to me to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
Well, that has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change, you've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
A very good morning. I'm Darren Grimes with Ellie Costello, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Yes, great to have your company this morning. We have got an action-packed show for you, as always.
With all the day's top stories, all the latest fallout from the general election announcement, we'll be joined by political commentator Joanna Georgi, former special advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and CEO and founder of the Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns.
This afternoon, we'll see the FA Cup final. Manchester City will battle it out against Manchester United. We'll be going live to both Manchester and Wembley to get the reactions ahead of the game.
And we'll be meeting this week's Greatest Britain, this inspirational young girl who set up a card charity for hospitalised children following her own life experiences and battle with illnesses.
As you know, this show is nothing without you, so we would love to hear what you think on any of the stories that we are talking about today. gbnews.com/yoursay. Please do get in touch.
Now, folks, before we do anything, Cameron Walker has all your news headlines.
Thanks, Darren. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. Michael Gove says it's time for a new generation to lead after he became the latest high-profile Conservative MP to step down. In a letter to his local party chairman, he said he'd made mistakes in his political career, but he'd always tried to be a voice for those who'd been overlooked and undervalued. Mr Gove has had a varied career at the front line of politics, from Chief Whip to Education Secretary, as well as Environment and Housing. It comes as both main parties continue their election campaign. Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Bim Afolami, says a re-elected Conservative government would bring economic growth.
We've been very, very clear about the next Parliament, which is a growth in public spending in real terms, above inflation, every year of the next Parliament. And we set out our plans on how we're going to cut the double taxation on work by cutting national insurance and cut tax for people and have a better environment for small business.
But Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, says Chancellor Jeremy Hunt hasn't been clear about how he'll pay for the Tories' policies.
Getting into a bit of a habit of announcing unfunded tax cuts. They've already promised to abolish national insurance altogether, costing £46 billion a year, without saying how they're going to pay for that. Are they going to cut pensions, the health service? Are they going to increase income tax? We need to know the answers to that. And now Jeremy Hunt is saying that he thinks he wants to abolish inheritance tax as well. That's going to cost billions of pounds more on top each year.
20 million vehicles will be on the move this bank holiday weekend, according to the latest estimates from the AA. There's already severe disruption around Dover, with huge queues leading to the port, heading to mainland Europe. The Port of Dover says there's currently a 2-hour processing time at the French border and is advising travellers to remain in their vehicles for their own safety. A total ban on smartphones for under-16s could be considered by the next government after a new report by MPs. The House of Commons Education Committee says tougher guidance on phones in schools and at home is needed to ensure young people are protected. It says the age of digital consent should be raised from 13 to 16, with a statutory ban on phones at school. The committee found there's been a 52% increase in children's screen time between 2020 and 2022, with a quarter displaying addictive behaviour. A murder investigation has been launched after a woman was found dead on a beach in Bournemouth last night. Dorset police said there were called to reports of 2 women, both from Poole, stabbed on Durley Chine Beach at around 11:45 p.m. yesterday. A 34-year-old woman was pronounced dead at the scene, while a 38-year-old was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin will stand trial as scheduled in July after a US judge denied a bid to dismiss a criminal charge against him. Baldwin had previously pleaded not guilty to involuntary manslaughter after a prop gun he was holding fired, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins in October 2021. The judge ruled that the grand jury process was not prejudiced against the 66-year-old actor, clearing the way for an unprecedented trial of a Hollywood actor for an on-set death. If convicted, he could face 18 months in prison. Vladimir Putin is reportedly ready to pause his invasion of Ukraine with a negotiated ceasefire that would recognise current battlefield lines. According to 4 sources who spoke to the news agency Reuters, the Russian president has grown frustrated by what he sees as Western attempts to derail possible negotiations. Asked about the report during a visit to Belarus yesterday, Putin said talks should resume and negotiations should be based on the realities on the ground. Ukraine's President Zelensky has previously said that peace, according to Putin's terms, is impossible. Now it's the biggest game in Manchester as City and United meet once again in the FA Cup final in front of a sellout Wembley crowd. Pep Guardiola's side want to follow up on last Sunday's title triumph by sealing a domestic double. United head into the match with speculation about manager Erik ten Hag's future following their worst Premier League finish, ending the season in 8th. We spoke to some fans who gave their predictions ahead of the big game.
Oh, I think we've got to get it, Man United. We've not had a good season. We want the excitement.
The way they've been playing, I'd say 50-50.
Bit nervous and what have you. Not had a great season, but we weren't doing great and we still beat Liverpool a few weeks ago. So anything can happen in 90 minutes, can't it?
It's Derby Day. I'm always nervous on Derby Day. Obviously, the added pressure of it being an FA Cup final.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ellie and Darren.
Thank you, Cameron, and welcome to Saturday Morning Live. And of course, we start with this post-war record-breaking exodus. It's been reported that nearly 80 Tory MPs are leaving the Commons.
Former leadership contenders Andrea Leadsom and Michael Gove are the big names that have announced their resignation.
So, does this mean that the Tory party have accepted defeat? Or is it, as Michael Gove has said, that it's time for a new generation of leaders? Well, to talk about this, we're delighted to be joined by political commentator Joanna Jarju, former special advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and CEO and founder of the Youth Vote UK, Alex Cairns. Very good morning to all of you. And Charlie Rowley, you know I'm coming to you first, because you know Michael Gove very, very well. What's going on? Have they just given up?
Well, I know him a little bit.
Met him once or twice.
I met him once or twice. Worked for him for a few years. No, I don't think so. I mean, look, you know, the resignations that took place yesterday, if you take Michael Gove, if you take Andrea Leadsom, if you take John Redwood, they've been in Parliament for a number of years. They've served in successive Conservative governments, both leadership contenders, as you say, Andrea and Michael. And I think after what's been a long 14 years in government, if you're a Conservative, it's probably about time to take a step down. And that's what they've decided to do individually. So this isn't a mass resignation. This isn't everybody deciding the game's up. I think they're looking at their own individual circumstances and coming to that conclusion.
It is record-breaking, though, which would say it hasn't been seen before, not since the post-war period. Joanna, what's going on?
Well, I actually do think it's a mass resignation. You know, if the Tories were up, I don't think that we would see this. You know, there's some people who spend a lifetime in Parliament, whether it's in opposition or not, and I think that that's where we can kind of recognise whether this job really is a vocation for some people that they see for life. You know, something that's for service, you know, they see themselves in that position. And then obviously there's people who are more kind of career politicians. I would actually, to be a bit lighter on Michael Gove, would say that he's probably somewhere in between. I would have expected that he would have stayed because obviously he's been such a big figure within the political party over the last 20 years, which is obviously significant. I just would have expected him to stay because he's been through it. You know, obviously he had his whole situation with Boris Johnson and people accusing him of kind of stabbing him in the back. And he's been able to kind of survive all of that. So I would have thought that maybe he would be here pushing, but I guess for him in the future, he's maybe thinking, well, do I actually see myself staying and being in opposition maybe for 2 further terms and then trying to start that fight all over again?
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? Especially with these heavyweights like Andrea Leadsom. would you see them in opposition? Would they want to do a term, potentially even two, in opposition?
No, I completely agree, actually, with Joanna. I actually think that a lot of them have looked at the situation. You know, I think politicians are quite calculated. They've got a lot of analysis that they're being given around, you know, potentially their majority, is it vulnerable? And actually they're thinking, what is life like in opposition? You know, to be really honest, lots of them have been used to being in cabinet, you know, used to having power. A lot of politicians want power. So they're looking at the situation and thinking, I'm going to tap out, you know, and go and work in the private sector and make some money, probably.
Now, Charlie, Jeremy Hunt this morning calling for inheritance tax to be scrapped. Now, you might be forgiven, Ellie, for assuming that Jeremy Hunt hasn't been part of a Conservative party that's been in government for the last 14 years.
Well, yes, that is true. He has been. He's served in a number of cabinet posts as well. But I think the circumstances that you find ourselves in at the minute, where he's Chancellor, you know, you've come through a very, very difficult time, a very difficult pandemic. Obviously, you know, under a very keen tax-cutting Conservative Liz Truss that lasted about 49 days. You know, that didn't have the impact on the economy that I think she wanted to achieve. So, look, the great success of the Conservative Party is its ability to adapt. And so when things go wrong and when the economy takes a turn, you react accordingly to put things right. That's why it's a party that, you know, banks on its economic success. And, you know, Jeremy Hunt has had to steady the ship along with Rishi Sunak. And now is the time, I think, having gone through COVID, having gone through the war in Ukraine, where energy bills have had to go up and you've had to step in again to protect people's energy bills, now is the time, having dealt with the difficult decisions, that the economy has turned a corner, inflation is down, you've got growth again, where we're now able to talk about things that matter to Conservative voters, like tax cuts, including inheritance.
Well, hang on, let's have a little look at what earlier we spoke to GBNews Shadow Secretary, the Labour Party's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, and he had this to say on Jeremy Hunt slamming inheritance tax.
Well, look, the first thing I would politely say to Jeremy Hunt is he's getting into a bit of a habit of announcing unfunded tax cuts. They've already promised to abolish national insurance altogether, costing £46 billion a year, without saying how they're going to pay for that. Are they going to cut pensions, the health service? Are they going to increase income tax? We need to know the answers to that. And now Jeremy Hunt is saying that he thinks he wants to abolish inheritance tax as well. That's going to cost billions of pounds more on top each year. So I think the Conservatives really need to set out in detail how they plan to fund and cost their policies when they announce them during this election campaign.
So, Joanna, you heard that there, Darren Jones saying the Tories don't know how they're going to pay for this tax cut. But a lot of people on the Conservative side of politics are saying, well, Labour have spent their tax-raising proposals about 10 times over now.
Well, I think that Labour have been very, very clear in terms of how, you know, they're going to cost certain things. So obviously there's the non-dom tax status and also the VAT as well when it comes to private schools. And I think that Labour have been very careful this time to really put fiscal responsibility at the forefront, because they've had that kind of reputation in the past that, oh, if you go with Labour, they're just going to spend all this money willy-nilly without enough thought. So I think Rachel Reeves has really kind of, you know, doubled down on that. But I think, you know, overall, you know, this is probably a good Conservative strategy going into the election, talking about inheritance tax, even though it doesn't actually affect that many people in the country. I think that it's a kind of clear dividing line between the two parties, and sometimes we've had a bit of kind of the muddying of waters in terms of where do people stand. Are you for the middle class? Are you for the working class? And obviously Keir Starmer's been talking a lot about being working class himself and kind of identifying with that demographic. And I think that Jeremy Hunt is doing something similar with inheritance tax as well, and showing that Tories are the ones to cut taxes, even though it wouldn't be that significant anyway for the majority of people.
Alex, this isn't the first time that we've been talking about a death tax, right? The Tories have done this before. We've heard it all before. But as I said earlier, 14 years and they didn't do anything about said death tax.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, you know, we always see in elections that suddenly everyone becomes, you know, very interested in certain things. And actually, you're bang on. A lot of people look at inheritance tax and think, I'm never going to be... It'll be a luxury to actually have a potential second property. And, you know, I think a lot of young voters are thinking, why does inheritance tax even matter to me? So, as you say, I think it's just him deciding to play to his base, I'd say, yeah.
It's going to be really interesting in this general election, I'm sure you agree, the role of the Lib Dems and Reform in all of this, because Lib Dems are going to be going for the blue seats, the would-be Tories, and, of course, Reform are going to be going for the red wall. So Ed Davey this week saying, look, we're not going to form a majority. I'm not going to be Prime Minister. We're going to be looking at local issues in the blue wall. So let's have a little listen about what he had to say.
There are so many seats that have been traditionally Conservative that the Liberal Democrats are the ones who can take off them. And increasingly in the southwest, the West Country, which used to be a stronghold for the Liberal Democrats, we're back there again. We've seen that in the by-election victories in Somerset and Devon. We've seen that in council victories this year in Dorset, last year in Devon, the previous year in Somerset. So across the south of England, I think people realise now if they want to get rid of the Conservatives, they vote Liberal Democrat.
How much of a threat to the Tories are the Lib Dems and Reform going to be, Charlie?
Sorry, who was that man?
It's Ed Davey. You also know very well.
Has anyone ever heard of him? He's been absent for, I mean, people will just look at Ed Davey, I think, and they won't forgive him at all for his absence during the Post Office scandal when he was the Post Office Minister. And I think that'll be a stain on him and his party for this whole campaign. But look, at the end of the day, people know across the country that you're only going to get either Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister on the 4th of July. Any vote for anybody else will just be something that I think people, even though they might want to vote for an alternative party if you're bored of the two mainstream ones, but if you really want to have a say, if you really want a government that is going to do things for you, then I think you've either got to vote Tory or Labour.
Well, you'd laugh, Charlie, but actually Ed Davey second in the polls at the moment when it comes to Michael Gove's seat. So could that be the reason Michael said, I'm Scarborough and I won't be beaten by that man?
I don't think so. I think, look, Michael said in his letter, and I think, look, we can talk about his career, we can talk about all kinds of issues in politics, but, he said that being in frontline politics, it does take its toll. And I think, having the career that he's had in top cabinet positions, and obviously he's had a few political dramas along the way, sort of, leading the Vote Leave campaign, falling out with David Cameron, and then, of course, with Boris Johnson. But at every turn, whether he was ditched from cabinet by Theresa, wasn't accepted by Liz, he was always brought back. Even Boris, even in the fallout with Boris, he recognised his talents and had him right at the heart of government, dealing with Brexit and then responding to COVID.
I mean, Joanne, do you actually think that the minority parties will play a significant role in this election? Because you even had figures like Owen Jones associated with the Labour Party saying, don't vote Labour this time around because they're going to actually secure quite a big majority. Who knows whether that's true? He must be Mystic Meg. But actually, that he's saying vote for the minority parties in this election.
Well, I think that when you look at the way that the Tory party especially have been behaving, they've been shaking in their boots when it comes to reform, and obviously reform have been creeping up slowly and slowly. And I actually have a bit of a theory that one of the reasons that Rishi Sunak has called this election at the time that he has is because he doesn't want to allow reform to be able to kind of form and have more time by the time we have an October election. So I think that he's done this basically to cut them at the legs and make sure that they don't kind of grow anymore. So I think that, it would be, it makes sense, not to kind of throw out the smaller parties when it comes to the impacts that they will have. And I think that even when you look at reform and the influence that they've had on Tory policy as well, in terms of just shifting to the right, some of the influence, obviously some Tory party members like Lee Anderson defecting to that side as well. I think that even if it's not in terms of votes, they're having an influence on the way that the Tory party actually approach things.
Look, Alex, you are the CEO of Youth Vote UK, aren't you? Really interested to talk to you about a story in the Times today. This is about the Labour Party looking to introduce votes for 16 and 17-year-olds in their first year in government if they win the general election. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I support it. I mean, it's not a massive shock that I support it. I think the reality is that we see a lot of, especially 17-year-olds, very active in society. Lots of them getting into the workforce, apprenticeships. I think, Labour being smart there. Clearly, the data suggests that more of them will vote for Labour. And actually, I think it's a good thing. I know a lot of, people will be watching this and probably getting really annoyed because I think what do 17-year-olds know about anything? And that's always the argument thrown at me, which I get. But I think it's a little bit patronising because I do think that actually 16, 17-year-olds have an active part in society, and actually we'll see the political dynamic change because I think Labour will recognise it happens in Scotland. They've been able to vote for a long time, so I think it should be the same in a general election. Yeah,
Joanna.
Well, I completely agree. As a 16-year-old, actually, that was the first time that I really started to get into politics, and it was when it was the 2010 general election, and I was kind of really into the whole, Lib Dem lie, actually, about tuition fees, so that's what got me into it. But I think that, especially for this next election, I think Labour, especially in terms of their policies, especially, focusing on climate and things that matter to the younger generation, I think earlier on I was thinking you might be at risk with the younger generation, especially in terms of the Israel-Palestine conflict as well, and how big that is on social media. And we know that the younger people do tend to get their news on things like TikTok and Instagram. There's no way around that. But I think that Labour have been able to claw it back a bit by now talking about a ceasefire and also a two-state solution in Palestine, and leading, as I said, with the climate policies as well.
It's been really interesting talking about inheritance tax and Jeremy Hunt, because he's also been talking about younger voters and talking about his regrets almost. He does sound regretful, saying that he wished he'd offered more support to first-time buyers. But he says, look, the situation they've been in has been too challenging so far. But of course, if they were to win the next general election, support for first-time buyers would come along. Do you think it's too little, too late?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's funny that now going into election, he has regrets about not doing enough for young people. I think the Tories are looking at the polling and it's suggesting, we did a poll the other day, 72% said they're going to vote Labour. I think the Tories are on about 8%. And actually, they need every vote they can get. So I think it's very ironic that he's thinking, I have regrets. No, you don't, mate,
Just briefly, Charlie, you were young once. Has the Conservative Party let you down?
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said. No, it hasn't, no. But look, I think it ties into the votes to 18 as well. Look, I think there's an age where you become legally an adult. Of course, you can work, you pay tax when you're, from 16 if you can work, maybe even before. But I think, look, there just comes a point with social media and with misinformation, and I think, 18 is just a good age when you can actually have you can escape TikTok and all the other sort of bits of social media where you do get a lot of fake news, and actually where you can understand a bit more of the world, where you've had a COVID pandemic, we've had a war in Ukraine, we've had a very difficult economic start when the Tories came in 2010. Don't forget, the note that was left by the former Labour government that said there is no money left. So, of course, there's going to be tough decisions that have got to be made by the Conservatives. They've done that. And, it is a shame that it has taken a long time to get things back to where they need to be. But I do think, there is, of course, there's regret. There'll be regret about not being able to help as many people as you want to, but you're only able to govern in the parameters and the restraints that you've been given. And I think now, of course, as the economy has turned a corner for the better, we've got growth, inflation down, all the things that the government said it's wanting to do, it is now doing. And so the choice is very clear at the next election to help young people and to give the support to people where there is regret. I think you can do that by voting Conservative.
All right. Thank you very much to the panel there. Charlie Rowley, we've got Joanna Georgiou, and of course Alex Cairns. Thank you very much to them. We'll catch up later in the show. Coming up, though, we're going to meet our greatest Briton. And next, how do you deal with politics in the home? Do you argue with your loved ones? This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the UK's most popular baby names have been revealed, with Noah and Olivia again topping the annual list. In at number 2 is Mohammed for boys. List is on the screen here. Number 3 for boys is George. Then it goes Olivia. Then it's Leo, Arthur, and so on. And for girls, so Olivia is number 1. Then Amelia, Isla, Ava, Lily, Ivy, Freya. There we go. Any of those names take your pick? Where's Dawn, by the way?
Well, yeah, there's on the Telegraph website, right, there's a really good way linked into this where you can actually put your name into the search engine, and these are names from 2022, by the way, and it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in, it's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring in this list. We are dying out. Our names will soon be gone forever, and I feel victimised by it.
Likewise, I should think we should start a campaign group and go on a protest march through London.
Hans, what do you make about Mohammed being number 2 for boys' names?
You know, I'm not going to comment on people. You know, they're going to call what they want to call. What I find interesting is people that do double barrel because they can't decide, and you know, a lot of people do that, and that's a bit difficult because I think you should just pick a name. You know.
I tell you names that are falling down the list though: Harry and Meghan.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. It is 10:25. Loads of you getting in touch this morning, and you're all big fans of Charlie Rowley, which is so lovely because we're big fans of him as well, aren't we?
We are.
James says, I'm asking myself, why can't I be as diplomatic as Charlie? I must listen and learn.
Well, that's what wanting a career in politics does to a person, I'm afraid. Yes. But we'll get on to that later. John says, interesting to hear Charlie's insight on Gove, given he used to work for him.
Yes, it's very good to have him this morning, isn't it? To have
very much so.
Mick says, voting is for adults. If 16 is adult, why can't they marry, smoke and get tattoos?
That's a good point.
Well,
yeah.
They can, can't they?
And Maggie says, what about the Labour MPs who are stepping down? Yeah, because there are some of them as well. Not as many as the Tories, mind, it has to be said. And I think that maybe they can smell a direction.
Yes, it does make you think about rats.
It does. And James says, Charlie nailed it. Only 2 parties, and it's so true. Yeah. Do you feel like you've got no choice, I wonder, James?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will be sitting on their hands at the next general election. But it was really interesting, actually. I spoke to Nadine Dorries earlier on this week, and she was saying that's how she felt. Yeah. That she wanted to sit at home. She didn't want to vote for anybody. I know a lot of people can relate to that feeling at the moment.
She's a big Boris woman.
Of course, she's so loyal to Boris Johnson, and she doesn't like Rishi Sunak. She's made that very clear. But she says, I must think about myself and the party and vote Tory.
Right, yeah.
So that's what she said. She said she will make herself do it. She's going to hold her nose and do it. So do let us know what you think on that. On this mass exodus, or is it, as Michael Gove says, just a new generation coming in? And also let us know what you think about inheritance tax and getting the vote at 16. There's lots to get through today. Now, at 10:27, navigating any relationship can be tricky. But what about one where you have different political opinions? Do you dare to cross party lines?
What about raising children with different political opinions to your own? Are you helping them pave their way? Or are you just increasing the risk of kitchen table feuds?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a problem a lot of families can relate to right now. So who better to join us for this conversation than our favourite political husband and wife duo, former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. And you two, have things got so bad where you're not even appearing together, Claire?
Well, I like to have my own space, as every woman should. It's not quite as impressive as the library, but I think that we all need to bust out on our own occasionally.
Ah, very good, very good. Now, you two, we admire you so much here at GB News because you are, of course, husband and wife, but like Nigel, you're to the left, Claire, you're to the right. Do you like how we've put you on the left and the right-hand side of the screen as well? That was all intentional. How does it work in your home, then, when you're discussing politics, especially with your young son, Nigel?
Well, I mean, we discuss politics rather than argue about it. Both of us are political professionals. We've been in the game a long time, so we understand that. So we're more keen on what is actually going on and how things are working out than clashing over opinions. Now, Claire is a Tory Brexiteer. I'm a Labour Remainer. We discussed that throughout the referendum campaign, and my view remains that it was Brexit came at a cost. The price was too high for sovereignty, for taking back control. Where my opinion changes a bit is I still think the cost was too high. But in that particular instance, I think anybody who believed in sovereignty and thought the price was worth paying voted the right way. So I have sort of moderated my opinions on the basis of that.
I mean, Claire, do you actually think that society's just got worse across the piece? Do you think relationships like your own are going to become less and less common?
I think they are, and I think we can see that politics has become very divided, it's become very toxic, and we've lost that art of debating. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody on any subject to do with politics, because I think it's only healthy to listen to someone's opinion. You may not agree with it, you may think that they're ridiculous. However, I think it's really important that you hear those views, because if you only become encased in a bubble of your own opinion, you're never going to learn anything. And I think politics needs that. You need to be able to explore other sides of an argument. It also makes you better at arguing.
Yeah.
And Nigel and I constantly disagree on various bits and pieces, but you learn how to place your argument so much better because you know what the other side are thinking. Now, if we had that across the country and across the House of Commons, we could have so much better debate and so many better different opinions coming through, and it would be a lot healthier.
We have lost that art, haven't we, Nigel, of listening to each other and polite debate, which always strikes me about you two. You disagree on most things when it comes to politics, but you do so with so much humour and so much respect for one another.
Well, we find politics fun, and so when we bring politics into the home, we want to have fun with it too. But yes, it is about that. It's as Claire says, it's about talking about it, rehearsing your opinions with each other, modifying where necessary. I mean, Claire's made good points to me about certain things, and I've thought, yeah, okay, next time I'm on GBNews, I might reflect that rather than the opinion I held previously. But yes, just simply talking about it in a rational, sensible, calm way is the best way of getting to some answers.
Claire, is it true what people say then, especially when it comes to you and Nigel, that opposites really do attract?
Absolutely. I mean, we pretty much oppose each other on every single issue, but the one thing we can do is laugh at situations. We can look at how ridiculous sometimes politics is, and as we've seen only on day 3 of the campaign, it is faintly ridiculous. And you come together over a sort of mutual respect for each other, what you do, and as long as you can laugh about it, you don't take it out on each other and you never go to sleep on an argument, I think that's the route to success.
Yeah, Claire, I want to stay with you just for this one question. Are you worried about the politicisation of children, for example? Where do you actually draw the line with discussing politics to children?
I don't think you can avoid discussing politics. I think it's really important that children have a view of the world and especially policies that will affect them growing up and becoming an adult. But I think that you have to let them make their own decisions. Now, my son is 15 years old. He is more than capable of holding his own in an argument. I don't put my views upon him. He knows what they are. Or, you know, other views in this household are available. So he has access to both sides of it. He also can't help himself but look at news channels. He looks at social media, which young people do get most of their information from social media these days. And I always encourage him to come and talk to me, have a conversation about it. But the one thing I won't do is suggest to him how he should vote and how he should form his views. That is for him to do. I can just supply him with information.
OK, Claire and Nigel, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but we love you as a couple, and it is so refreshing as well to just hear that people can disagree.
It is,
but
isn't
do
it?
it politely
It is.
and with a lot of humour and love as well. So thank you, you two. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, do stay with us. We're going to be meeting this week's Greatest Britain. But up next, we're going to be discussing the latest ahead of the FA Cup final this afternoon. Are you excited?
I am excited, actually.
So
Come on,
am I.
Man City.
This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
The Eurovision, according to figures out this morning, had its most disastrous night to date because viewing figures were down by 2.5 million.
So the BBC had a drag queen on telling everyone that she was boycotting it.
Who was boycotting it?
Someone called Crystal, who came on the Newsnight to say
she?
that she was boycotting her North London party because of Israel. So maybe that's why the figures are down.
They cancelled some Eurovision parties in gay bars in Soho.
Exactly. So I wonder whether that's what did it.
North
London party. I think the whole of Dalston basically not tuning in is what's caused this massive drop in ratings because of the whole controversy around Israel. I have to say, a lot of those performers needed to go and see a hygienist. I mean, that man who was the Irish entry, who's supposed to be a satanic witch. She does pop witchery or something.
She screeched.
And she screeched a lot, and then took her clothes off. Yeah. And then there was a sort of devil man who was gyrating around her, who obviously hadn't cleaned his teeth in years.
That was the vodka break.
Okay, fine.
That was the vodka break. When I went and got.
And I thought the Israeli entry. I mean, I didn't really like the song. I liked her dress.
But I just voted for it because
I thought the choreography was
I hated
awful.
the way she was
but,
besieged in a hotel room.
But I did also think that the Ukraine entry was quite interesting because I know that the Israeli entry got into trouble for referencing the October 7th attacks, and she had to sort of rewrite her stuff because you're not allowed to mention the war or anything like that, which is fine. But then the Ukraine entry was very war. I mean, they had kind of gunfire coming in over her.
The whole thing, there was double standards.
There was quite a lot of that,
I mean, the people outside, the queers of Palestine.
Are we going to carry on paying for it, though? Because, I mean, the BBC pays the lion's share of it. That's us.
Yeah.
And we do spectacularly badly every year.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Sandra says no-go areas in our house are politics, religion, and who makes the best roasties. We just shout at the TV screen instead.
Well, indeed, I imagine there's many households agree with that.
Yeah.
And Anonymous says anyone under 18 should not be allowed to vote. They are children and open to undue influence. They have no real experience of life or of making decisions with consequences.
Yeah.
So, disagreement with Labour there.
I know a lot of people would agree with that view, so do keep them coming in. gbnews.com/yoursay. Now, some good news this morning. £20,000 has to be won in our Great British Giveaway, and you don't want to miss out on that.
Yeah, lines are going to close this Friday. Here's all the details you need for your chance to win the cash.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck. Aidan, we're going to talk to you in just a second. He can't help himself. Well, for a second year running, we have an all-Manchester FA Cup final on our hands.
Indeed, Manchester City will once again take on Man United at Wembley Stadium, with kick-off at 3 o'clock.
Yes, it's a chance for Premier League champions Manchester City to win a second trophy of the season, whilst it will be likely that Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag's last game.
Yeah, so will City complete a domestic double and help Newcastle and Chelsea achieve European football, or will United win their first trophy since February last year?
Oh, well, there's a lot to get through, and Aidan McGee is here with us. All eyes on Wembley, and you're going, aren't you?
I am indeed. Somebody contacted me this week and wanted some real good quality company for the big match. So I didn't know anyone. So
they
so I stepped in and filled the breach. And it's the first one I've been to as a fan. I've been to many as a professional, if you like, but I'm going as a fan today. £145 I paid for my ticket. You should be a seat ticket.
Yeah, we've got your ticket there.
We have indeed. So I've shaded out the key bits there just in case anyone feels like duplicating it. But yeah, that's what it costs these days to go to an FA Cup final. I thought it was a one-off. It's actually not a bad price. I'm not sure if you get any sandwiches or sausage rolls or anything with that.
Aidan, can they justify those prices? Does the FA Cup even matter anymore?
I think, you know, well, look, I mean, yeah, as a showpiece event, it still matters. I mean, as a, you know, I think gone are the days when we'd get up early at 8:30 in the morning, and from 9 o'clock we'd see terrestrial TV covering it from then until kick-off and afterwards. I mean, there's some really interesting content back then. I mean, you'd have an FA Cup final comedian, you'd have the cameras spending a time with each team. I mean, I think it was 1987, Coventry. Their captain got off at the canal over in Windsor somewhere and had to bear witness to a wedding. That was part of his duty leading up to the game. So you just used to see all these weird and wonderful things. You go out and buy the paper. You would place your bets if you're old enough. So yeah, that was what it was back then. In terms of what it means to the club these days, the prize pot isn't very heavy.
No.
But for as a showpiece event, tickets are like gold dust. I would say £145. I couldn't wait to pay. I rushed to my banking app and transferred my money.
And it does have an impact, of course, because, you know, whatever the result, it impacts other clubs.
It does, yeah. It impacts, as you mentioned, the lead there, impacts other clubs with the European situation. But Man United could, with a defeat, be facing no European football for only the second time since 1982, not including the 5-year ban on European clubs at the end of the 80s and start of the 90s.
And could this be the end of Ten Hag?
I think we're probably going to see the end of it. It's eerily similar to 2016, Ellie, actually, when Louis van Gaal, a Dutch manager, had spent 2 years at United, not really made an impact, but he did win the FA Cup final against Crystal Palace. He was sacked, though, 24 hours later, rather disappointingly for him. I think the same fate is going to befall Erik ten Hag today. I don't think he's made enough of an impact. I've been saying for 2 years that I've been around Man United for many years, covering them. I've been all around the world with them. I kind of know when a big club face fits a big club, and his is not a big club face. I don't think he's got the personality to deal with that club. I don't think he's got the wherewithal to change the culture. It's a 4 or 5 year turnaround. In fact, Man United, sooner or later, are going to have to stick with someone for the duration of that time, just as Arsenal did with Mikel Arteta. You're not going to change the functionality of a club or dysfunctionality of a club if you're just going to change managers every couple of years. But with new owners in the building now, who now own 25% of the club, they control the football operations as well. I think they'll be looking to make a change.
And they're serious, right? They're really serious.
Well, they should be, given the amount of money they...
Yeah, well, indeed.
I think
it was very expensive for that 25%.
Well, it was. I mean, it's well over £1 billion, but it's Man United. It makes money. It makes money without them being successful. That's one of the criticisms of the club, because they don't... Where's the incentive to sign all these players to give you all this success when you're making money as it is? You're already the richest club in the world.
So Scotland are getting a slice of the action as well, Aidan.
It's rare. Funnily enough, the old firm have never competed against each other, Ellie, in an FA Cup final since 2002. I mean, we think of them as the two dominant clubs in Scotland, and yet they haven't competed in a final at this level for 22 years. That was 2002, the last one. Rangers winning that by 3 goals.
Do you think it's going to kick off? I mean, literally kick off.
Well, hopefully it'll kick off. Hopefully kick off on time. Yeah, it could do. Yeah, it could do. But then the policing is strong. Yeah, they'll control the drinking hour, the licensing hours around the pub. Most people are there, as we know, to enjoy the football. But yeah, there's always the prospect of flashpoints, particularly as both clubs are from Glasgow, and the final's being played in Glasgow at a neutral venue, Hampden Park, of course.
I'd love to go. Honestly,
I'd love to, yeah. I'd love to.
The scenes there and the patriotism on both sides. Actually.
I know. Well, that was the complaint by the old Scotland manager, the German guy called Bertie Vogts. He said, Celtic and Rangers is a match between England and Irish fans. What about Scotland? That's who I'm representing.
Right. Well, there might be some people in the middle asking that very question.
Yeah, it might be, yeah, exactly. Indeed.
Well, yeah.
Aidan, thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot.
And
Good to see you
enjoy the
both.
game this afternoon. What time to kick off?
3 o'clock. I have photos for you tomorrow, don't worry.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, wow. All of that to look forward to. Thank you, Aidan. Now, don't go anywhere, as next we're going to be meeting our greatest Britain. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast, brought to you by the Met Office. It's fair to say the weather this weekend is going to be pretty messy. However, today actually looks largely dry for many of us because there's a relatively slack flow across the country at the moment, though there are some systems waiting out towards the west and the east, which are going to bring some rain later. But for the time being, a bit of a chilly start because we had some clear skies overnight. That does mean quite a bit of sunshine this morning. However, we are going to see a bit more cloud bubbling up as we go into the afternoon, and there will be some showers around, most of us avoiding these, but towards eastern areas, East Anglia, Lincolnshire, we are going to see a bit of rain pushing its way in as we go through the afternoon. In any sunshine, it's going to feel pleasantly warm. Temperatures a touch higher than yesterday, highs of around 22 or 23 Celsius. It is going to turn pretty wet as we go through this evening and overnight. We have some rain across northern and eastern parts, and then a swathe of wet weather feeding its way up from the southwest. Could see some heavy bursts as that pushes its way northeastwards across many parts. Because of the cloud and the rain, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount, so it's going to be a milder start to the day tomorrow than it was this morning. It is also going to be quite a cloudy and at times wet picture. Most of us will see some rain at times. Showery outbreaks to start off with, and then plenty of showers developing as we go towards lunchtime and the afternoon. Some of these could pack quite a punch. Some torrential downpours are possible, as well as some hail and some thunder. There will be some sunny spells in between the showers though, and in any of these it should still feel warm enough, even though temperatures are down a couple of degrees compared to today. A quick look to Bank Holiday Monday, and after an initially dry start in the east, it's going to be another largely cloudy picture for many. Further outbreaks of showery rain. Again, these could be a little bit heavy at times, but there are some signs that we could see something a little bit drier developing towards western and southwestern parts as we go through the afternoon. Temperatures, though, down a little bit compared to tomorrow. Bye-bye.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Ellie Costello and Darren Grimes. Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Big fans of Claire Pearsall and Nigel Nelson, who we were talking to earlier. They're on the left and the right of the spectrum, but they're a happily married couple, aren't they?
Yeah, indeed.
Lots of you are fans. John says there is hope. A married couple talking about politics without shouting each other down. Maybe some others need to give it a try.
Yeah, but then Avril says, I can't talk politics with my partner, as all his family always vote the same for life and never deviate. Yet I listen to today's politics and learn.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to go. And Albin says, love Claire and Nigel, even though most of the time I don't agree with Nigel's politics. But that's OK. We don't need to agree with each other. We just need to be polite, don't we, and respectful. So do keep those views coming in. gbnews.com/yoursay. Now, here on Saturday Morning Live, we love to give a spotlight to amazing people who do amazing things. And today we have got an incredible individual who founded the Cards for Bravery project.
Yeah, Katie lives with multiple rare and chronic health conditions which are life-limiting and have a severe effect on her daily life.
Yes, and she has started this incredible Cards for Bravery project, which she's going to be telling us about now. And I'm so delighted to say that Katie joins us in the studio now. And Katie, you are this week's Greatest Britain.
Yes,
thank you so much for being in the studio. You are just the most incredible person.
Thank you so
it is a pleasure to have you in the studio with us. Tell us a little bit about your story then, because you have been in and out of hospital, haven't you, for the past 9 years?
Yes, so I sort of spent the majority of my childhood and teenage years in hospital, and I founded Cards for Bravery when I was 13 years old. It was during sort of one of my first longer hospital admissions. So I've been in hospital for about 4 months at the time. So obviously, yeah, it was a particularly hard stay and I was having a really difficult time. And I sort of done a few things before for like other charities, like some fundraising and stuff. I was sort of wanting to do something to help others in a similar situation as mine. So a friend of mine gave me a handmade card and it really brightened my day, and it was like signed by everyone in my class at school, and I sort of like put it up on the wall in my hospital room, and it was just amazing. And I'm very artistic and creative myself, so I started making some cards for the other children that were on my hospital ward, and it's just sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah. Because 25,000 handmade cards to over 25 hospitals, hospices and child and adolescent mental health units.
That's correct.
That's a lot.
I don't make them all myself.
Yeah, no.
No, we have amazing. We have like hundreds of people all over the globe that send us in handmade cards. So yeah, that's really how we're able to do what we do. People sending in the cards and stuff.
You're obviously such a generous, kind person because you've been through so much yourself. As you say, some stints in hospital lasting 4 months.
Yeah.
And even now, you dig deep and you think about other people and what would make other people feel better. Yeah. Where does that come from in you?
I mean, I think I always say, like, as much as Cards for Bravery helps everyone that we support, it also really helped me. Because obviously, sort of being in hospital for such long periods and becoming a wheelchair user and stuff, at the time, I sort of lost a lot of my hobbies and I lost some friends and stuff. So even when I was going through everything, when I go through everything myself, it gives me something like to focus on, and just has become something that, you know, when I am well enough, I can put my time and energy into it, and it's sort of become that like passion and hobby of mine that I'm sort of able to do, whether I'm in bed at home or at a desk or in hospital. The first sort of 6 years of the charity really were sort of mainly run from when I was in hospital myself. So yeah, I think as much as it's helped other people, it's also really helped me.
What do you think, actually, the feeling of receiving something that's handmade, right? You get that, there's a romanticisation about it, isn't there? Opposed to living in a very digital age, receiving an email or a text message or something like that. It's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I think we really emphasise all of our cards being handmade, and, you know, we have 3-year-olds that make cards for us, we have, like, 80-year-olds making cards for us, and they're all amazing. But I think having, you know, receiving that card and knowing it's handmade and that someone's made it and thought put into the effort that what they're making it for you, I think just really makes that difference.
And your life experience has probably added to this project, hasn't it? Because I suppose you only really understand how a long hospital stay feels like and how that impacts you if you've been through that yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially at the time when I founded Cards for Bravery, it can, especially sort of as a child, a young person, it can just feel, you know, so isolating and scared, and, you know, all your friends and stuff are continuing with school and you see them on social media, like, getting on with your life, and you can just feel so left out. It's just getting those, like, simple gestures, you know, like handmade cards and gifts and things, just really sort of just brighten your day, really.
And we're seeing on screen the images of the operation itself and how big it is, the scale of the operation. But, you know, these Bravery packages...
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about them. What actually do those Bravery packages entail?
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, as well as cards, we now also have other services. So we started doing Bravery packages about 4 years ago, 4 years ago. And we distribute those to sort of children who are having a particularly hard time, who sort of have longer-term hospital admissions, sort of serious illness. And we always make sure they're very individualised and tailored towards the child. And they just sort of contain loads of, like, gifts and things that they enjoy. joy that can distract them when they're in the hospital, just bring a smile to their face. We always try to include something for like their siblings or parents if they have something, because they're forgotten about a lot of the time as well. So it's just something extra as well that they can just receive and have things to keep them occupied when they're going through those times.
You really have thought of everything, haven't you? You've even thought of the family.
We try to do as much as we can, sort of support like hospitalised and chronically ill children.
Amazing, Katie. And you received the British Citizen Award for services to volunteering and charitable giving as well. So what was that experience?
That was absolutely amazing. It was such an honour to like receive the invite in the post from the House of Lords. You know, it's such like fancy paperwork. My mum and I are like, oh my gosh, who's this from? And yeah, it was a brilliant day. You know, we started at the House of Lords, and then we went over and sort of had like the award ceremony. But you know, everyone was so lovely, and it was amazing. Also, you know, meeting other people that are doing amazing things as well.
Oh, well, Katie.
Well deserved, Katie.
Well deserved. And you are this week's Greatest Britain, and you truly are great. So thank you so much for coming in and joining us. And best of luck with the Cards of Bravery project. I think it's going to go a really, really long way. Still a long way to go, I'm sure. Katie, thank you so much indeed. Do stay with us. We've got lots more to come, including our Showbiz selection, more of today's top stories, and, of course, all the build-up to the FA Cup final this afternoon, which I know you are very excited about.
I am, actually,
You're very across all the detail. Don't go anywhere. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. As we go through the rest of Saturday, there'll be plenty of warm, sunny spells, but we do have some rain across eastern parts of England and also in the west later, as low pressure becomes the dominant weather feature through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers, particularly for Sunday and into Monday. So for the rest of Saturday, we can see it's quite cloudy across eastern England with some outbreaks of rain for parts of East Anglia and into Lincolnshire. And then later on, also some rain pushing into parts of Cornwall and Devon and southwest Wales. In between, some sunny spells, but quite a lot of cloud around. In the sunshine, temperatures reaching around 22 or 23 Celsius, but it will be chillier under the cloud and rain. So taking a look at the details for this evening time, it is largely dry across much of Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of rain across the central swathe here. Temperatures on the warm side to end the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunny spells this evening too, so dry for many parts, perhaps some rain later on. And we can see that rain across eastern England, quite a chilly evening to come. And then the sunny spells continuing further south. Through the overnight period, this area of rain pushes further north and eastward, some heavy bursts developing in there, and also some heavier rain across northeast England from the weather front in the east. And then overnight we can see it all tends to move its way northward, so a milder night compared to the night just gone. Temperatures holding up in double figures. But it does mean a grey start to Sunday morning, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards, but it does brighten up across southern counties of England and Wales, but this will help develop some heavy showers and thunderstorms through into the afternoon. A Met Office warning in force here, so there could be some local disruption in places, hail and thunder. Temperatures a little cooler.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a line, I never won a penny in my life. I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Costello with Darren Grimes, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure to have your company this morning, and we've got an action-packed show.
Yes, we'll have all of the day's top stories with political commentator Joanna Jarju and former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley.
And this afternoon, we'll see the FA Cup final. Manchester City will battle it out against Manchester United. We'll be going live to both Manchester and Wembley to get reactions ahead of the game.
And we're very excited about this. Outnumbered is returning to our screens. The wonderful Ellie Phillips hasn't given birth yet. It's a miracle. She'll be telling us all about the great British return.
And as I hope you well know by now, we want to hear from you. We would love to hear what you think. Send your views and your posts, your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say.
Yes, but before we do anything else, Cameron Walker is here with all your news headlines.
Thanks, Ellie. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 11. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. Michael Gove says it's time for a new generation to lead after he became the latest high-profile Conservative MP to step down. In a letter to his local party chairman, he said he'd made mistakes in his political career, but he'd always tried to be a voice for those who'd been overlooked and undervalued. Mr Gove has had a varied career at the front line of politics, from Chief Whip to Education Secretary, as well as environment and housing. It comes as both main parties continue their election campaigning. Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Bim Afellami, says a re-elected Conservative government would bring economic growth.
We've been very, very clear about the next Parliament, which is a growth in public spending in real terms, above inflation, every year of the next Parliament. And we set out our plans on how we're going to cut the double taxation on work by cutting national insurance and cut tax for people and have a better environment for small business.
But Labour's Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, says Chancellor Jeremy Hunt hasn't been clear about how he'll pay for the Tories' promises.
Getting into a bit of a habit of announcing unfunded tax cuts. They've already promised to abolish national insurance altogether, costing £46 billion a year, without saying how they're going to pay for that. Are they going to cut pensions, the health service? Are they going to increase income tax? We need to know the answers to that. And now Jeremy Hunt is saying that he thinks he wants to abolish inheritance tax as well. That's going to cost billions of pounds more on top each year.
20 million vehicles will be on the move this bank holiday weekend, according to the latest estimates from the AA. There's already severe disruption around Dover, with huge queues leading to the port heading to mainland Europe. The Port of Dover says there's currently a 2-hour processing time at the French border and is advising travellers to remain in their vehicles for their own safety. A total ban on smartphones for under-16s could be considered by the next government after a new report by MPs. The House of Commons Education Committee says tougher guidance on phones in schools and at home is needed to ensure young people are protected. It says the age of digital consent should be raised from 13 to 16, with a statutory ban on phones at school. The committee found there'd been a 52% increase in children's screen time between 2020 and 2022, with a quarter displaying addictive behaviour. A murder investigation has been launched after a woman was found dead on a beach in Bournemouth last night. Dorset police said they were called to reports of 2 women, both from Poole, stabbed on Durley Chine Beach at around 11:45 p.m. yesterday. A 34-year-old woman was pronounced dead at the scene, while a 38-year-old was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Now, the Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin will stand trial as scheduled in July after a US judge denied a bid to dismiss a criminal charge against him. Baldwin had previously pleaded not guilty to involuntary manslaughter after a prop gun he was holding fired, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins in October 2021. A separate case found that the handler of the weapon hadn't followed safety procedures, but the judge in Baldwin's case ruled that the grand jury was not prejudiced against him, clearing the way for an unprecedented trial of a Hollywood actor for an on-set death. Vladimir Putin is reportedly ready to pause his invasion of Ukraine with a negotiated ceasefire that would recognise current battlefield lines. According to 4 sources who've spoken to the news agency Reuters, the Russian president has grown frustrated by what he sees as Western attempts to derail possible negotiations. Asked about the report during a visit to Belarus yesterday, Putin said talks should resume and negotiations should be based on the realities on the ground. Ukraine's President Zelensky has previously said that peace, according to Putin's terms, is impossible. Now, it's the biggest game in Manchester as City and United meet once again in the FA Cup final in front of a sellout Wembley crowd. Pep Guardiola's side want to follow up on last Sunday's title triumph by sealing a domestic double. United head into the match with speculation about manager Erik ten Hag's future following their worst Premier League finish, ending the season in 8th. Now, we spoke to fans who've given their predictions already ahead of the big game.
I think we've got to get it, Man United. We've not had a good season. We want the excitement.
The way they've been playing, I'd say 50-50.
Bit nervous and what have you. Not had a great season, but we weren't doing great and we still beat Liverpool a few weeks ago. So anything can happen in 90 minutes, can't it?
It's Derby Day. I'm always nervous on Derby Day. Obviously, the added pressure of it being an FA Cup final.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ellie and Darren.
Thank you, Cameron, and welcome to Saturday Morning Live. And we start with a post-war record-breaking exodus. It's been reported that nearly 80 Tory MPs are leaving the Commons.
Yeah, former leadership contenders Andrea Leadsom and Michael Gove are the big names that have announced their resignation.
So, does this mean the Tory party have accepted defeat, or is it, as Michael Gove has said, that it's just simply time for a new generation of leaders?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're joined now by Charlie Rowley, of course, and Joanna Georgiou. But actually, Charlie Rowley, he says a new generation of leaders. I'm wondering, do you fancy your chances as one of these new generation of leaders to take it to Labour?
Well, I'm not a candidate, and
would you like to be?
Yes. You've got him, Ellie. It's all wrong. He's on the roll.
Blushing. No, look, I mean, there's. I stood 4 years ago, so there's no secret that I've been a candidate in the past. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm not.
That's not a denial, Charlie.
Well, look, I think if you think that if you believe in the Conservative cause as much as I do, as much as Boris Johnson does, which I'm sure we'll get onto in his column in the Daily Mail, then there's a real fight to be had. There's a real choice at this election between what the Conservatives are putting forward versus what Labour are offering, which doesn't seem to vary much.
Well, there's a man that agrees with you, actually, called Boris Johnson. Yes. You heard of him? He's in the Daily Mail, and he's actually saying that there's no doubt Keir Starmer would be the most dangerous and left-wing politician, Prime Minister, rather, since the 1970s.
And it's a compelling read, I have to say. Whatever your thoughts about Boris, he's never short of a turn of phrase.
He's very funny.
Pulling up on Labour's record in all sorts of ways, whether it's rent caps and housing, whether it's not building the homes that you need in London under Sadiq Khan, whether it's looking at Labour-run Wales, where the NHS is in more of a despair than it is in any other part of the UK, talking about Sir Keir Starmer and his record as Director of Public Prosecutions, failing to prosecute people like Jimmy Savile, and claiming to be this great unionist, wrapping the union flag round him tighter than Jerry Halliwell's leotard. So, never short of a comedic line. But he is someone that's articulated the case as to why there's a very clear choice at this election, and why I think he, as he does say, and why I agree with him, that the polls will narrow significantly between now and the 4th of July, and I think it'll be a lot closer than what people think.
OK. Joanna, what did you make of that column by Boris Johnson?
Well, naturally, I just thought it was absolute rubbish. And actually, the thing that kind of stood out for me was the fact that he used the word dangerous. Once upon a time when it was Corbyn, that was kind of his tagline that everybody had kind of tainted him with. But I think it's very ironic for somebody like Boris Johnson, the person who said, let the bodies pile high, when we were in the height of the pandemic, somebody who has prevented Parliament to fulfil their constitutional functions by illegally proroguing Parliament, all of those things, these type of things, that's what I actually class as dangerous in terms of being a Prime Minister and being responsible for all of us. So I just thought it was really ironic, really. But, Boris Johnson is obviously a brilliant writer, comes from that kind of journalistic background, so anything you read from him is always going to be entertaining, but just kind of felt as if it was the pot calling the kettle black, really, whether it's fair criticisms or not. I just think that Boris Johnson is probably the last person who should be saying that.
Well, two perspectives there. Do let us know what you think. gbnews.com/yoursay. Let's talk about reform for a moment, shall we? Because the Tories are concerned about splitting the right-hand vote. People who can't bring themselves to vote Labour but don't want to vote for the Tories, they'll swing to reform. And Jeremy Hunt's been talking about inheritance tax, hasn't he? It's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning. Earlier, GB News spoke to Reform Party spokesperson Howard Cox on their plans for the economy.
Growth in the economy. Everything is about taking money and spending. And that's the sort of thing that reform is different. It's because we want to put more money into people's pockets. Like starting when you go to work, you don't pay tax until £20,000. It's about £7,500 more than now. That will give people something like £30 a week more money in the pocket to spend in the economy, which will stimulate the economy, and they'll get more growth.
Think of that as a policy, no tax until you earn £20,000.
Well, I think, like reform, the Tories want to make sure that, you keep as much money that you earn before paying tax, but you've got to do it in a pragmatic and sensible way that doesn't rock the economy. But I think, look, that's why if you decide to vote reform and you end up with a Labour government, you're going to have a government that puts your taxes up. So it would be a complete counterproductive thing to do. You're only going to have Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister. So the best thing to do if you want your taxes cut and to keep as much money as you earn is to vote Conservative.
Joanna, what do you think about the role of reform in this election?
Well, I think that it's very easy for a party like Reform to bring out these kind of massive policies that sound amazing, obviously, to the general public. But I think that when people aren't really having the opportunity to hold you to account, so the majority of, even the debates that we're going to have, people aren't really going to pin them down and say, hang on, where are you actually going to get this money from? Which is obviously the criticism that Labour have worked to overcome by actually having a fully costed plan. I just think that, a party like reform as well that doesn't have even a clear manifesto. They call it a contract between the people and a party that is more so a limited company than a political party. I think that it's really hard to digest and take a lot of their things seriously. But I do think that obviously they do speak to a lot of people, especially in red wall seats that maybe might have lended a vote to the Conservatives before but still feel politically homeless. So there is a place for them, and I think that, you know, they're bound to grow, but whether the actual policies and the detail in terms of what they're putting forward is actually viable, I think that's the biggest question. They're a risk.
And what do you think reform means for the Lib Dems, Charlie? Because we were talking, well, let's have a look actually first at Ed Davies' view, because he says he's going to tackle the blue wall.
There are so many seats that have been traditionally Conservative that the Liberal Democrats are the ones who can take off them. And increasingly in the southwest, the West Country, which used to be a stronghold for the Liberal Democrats, we're back there again. We've seen that in the by-election victories in Somerset and Devon. We've seen that in council victories this year in Dorset, last year in Devon, the previous year in Somerset. So across the south of England, I think people realise now if they want to get rid of the Conservatives, they vote Liberal Democrat.
So, Charlie, you've got the blue wall, you've got the Lib Dems chopping away there, and then in the red wall, you've got reform making it nigh impossible for the Conservatives to hold on, have you not?
Well, I don't think it's... no, I don't think it's possible. I think, funnily enough... but I think, look, if you're in the south, what do you want to see? If you're in a traditional Conservative seat in the south, you want to see lower taxes. Well, you're not going to get that by voting Lib Dem. That might end up in a Labour coalition who want to put your taxes up. If you're in the north of England, if you voted Brexit for the first time because you thought Westminster didn't work for you, but also you wanted to take back control of your money, your borders and your laws, and where immigration might be a big thing for you, voting reform lets Labour in through the back door, who have got no plan to deal with immigration at all, which is counterproductive to what you want. And, so the only option, it seems to me, is voting Conservative.
Oh, well, you would say that, wouldn't you?
The only people who have a plan on immigration are Labour, but I'll leave it there.
Oh.
What do you make of the Lib Dems' focus at the moment? Because it was really interesting listening to Sir Ed Davey this week. In his first speech in reaction to the announcement of the general election, he had a real focus on local issues. He said they can really tackle the sewage issue. Now, do you think that's what people care about as the utmost in their minds when they're thinking about voting on polling day?
Well, I think that because obviously they're going to be very strategic in terms of where they place their candidates and where they're going to kind of, put all their eggs in one basket. And I think they've seen the success even in the by-election when it came to ULEZ and the Conservatives being able to slip through but then being defeated pretty much everywhere else. They've seen that when you focus on local issues in some areas, it does actually pay off. So I think that that's the strategy because really, like we were saying before, who is he? Where has he even been? He's been hiding all this time. So we haven't really seen any kind of famous flagship policies from Lib Dems. They don't have any public kind of 5 or 6 pledges. So the only thing that they can really do is hone in on the local areas that really matter in the seats that they think that they can actually win. So it's a smart choice, to be honest.
Now, Charlie, the Education Select Committee, they have put forward a report calling for the ban of smartphones for those who are aged under 16. Miriam Cates has been one MP that's been especially vociferous on this issue. We've had her on this very channel. Do you think actually it's a laudable aim? Would you imagine there's cross-party consensus on this, perhaps?
It's hard to say. It's definitely a conversation that I think we need to have because the age of smartphones and what people can see on their smartphones and what they have access to, effectively the dark web, I think is terrifying. Couple that with, social media, couple that with AI that's coming down the track, which can be used for good, AI in certain areas such as technology and health. But when it comes to media and influencing young people in so many different ways, through grooming as well as other influences that just, are inappropriate, age inappropriate, I think it is a conversation that we need to have. And schools, I think, are now taking responsibility to sort of, ban the mobile phone during the day. But what happens after that? and you know, how much parent or guardian protections need to be in place to protect young people. It's not about restricting young people's freedoms to look at things on the web or to text friends or to have all the social norms or games that we had when we were kids. I mean, we were playing on Nokia 3210, I think. You know,
Sony Ericsson.
Exactly. But, you know, so things have evolved, things have changed, but it's not about restricting freedoms, but it's just about protection, because there is so many things now that are on the web and that you can access through a smartphone, which is dangerous and harms young people. That has to be looked at.
Enough about Charlie Rowley's browsing history. Where are you at?
I've been googling your GB News appearances too much. Saturday 5. I've been watching too much of the Saturday
5. No, I think that the intention for this is good, but whether it will actually work in terms of, because you kind of need that collaboration and support from parents as well. You know, that's a big part of it. And you know, we talk about 12 to 16-year-olds and smartphone use and social media use, but actually, apparently, a quarter of 3 to 4-year-olds own a smartphone, which I thought was just crazy. I would have thought maybe, okay, you play a few games on your tablet, but times have changed so much in the sense that when I was growing up and I was a preteen, it was Pigzo and Bebo and you know, MySpace, and it was all very innocent. But obviously now social media has become, you know, quite ugly. We've seen deaths and things like that from teenagers and their parents setting up. So I think that the intention is there, and they've had the online safety bill as well to help that, but it just hasn't gone far enough yet.
And that's a really good point, actually, because there is a responsibility for parents. It's not just schools and not just the education committee. You know, parents, and I know it's tough being a parent. I mean, I'm not one, but, you know, I've got a young niece, and I know lots of friends who are parents. It can be very difficult, can be very challenging, but it's too easy just to sort of placate your child by handing them a smartphone to keep them entertained, rather than doing other activities that we might have done when we were kids. So I think, you know, it's too easy to reach for the mobile phone as a distraction, rather than maybe sort of slightly better parenting to make sure that your kids aren't accessing the smartphone, where it can be quite dangerous.
No, it was really interesting, wasn't it, when the Prime Minister announced this general election, that defence was front and centre of that speech, talking about the fact that we live in a more dangerous world. This headline, then, might catch a few eyes in Westminster. This is in the Telegraph today and various other places, that Vladimir Putin has hinted at a ceasefire in Ukraine. This is from Kremlin sources that say the Russian leader believes he's taken enough territory that he can now present that to the Russian people as a victory. This is a good thing, I imagine, Charlie?
Well, stopping the conflict in total is obviously a good thing, but this is an interesting development, because it shows that Russia, however much it wants to sort of flex its muscles to the international community, it is weak. It hasn't got the military arsenal that, you know, it constantly wants to tell us about. That's why it's so important and was so vital that we gave the money to Ukraine, that the Americans passed that bill to give them the $1 trillion or whatever it was, to make sure that they've got the resources on the ground to win this conflict, to win this fight in quick succession. It's gone on longer than anybody wanted, and that's why Boris, I mean, he doesn't mention it in his article, but that's why he's been at the forefront, and when he was Prime Minister, at the forefront of supporting Ukraine, because he knows that, you know, the victory is there. So I think this isn't... I mean, it's a way of spinning, I think, to the Russian people that, you know, we can't actually win because we don't have the resource, and, you know, troops are tired, and we've had to bring people in, you know, normal civilians who can't fight, and actually it's costing Russia a hell of a lot more than what it wants to tell us. So I think, look, stopping the conflict in total is absolutely vital. Making sure Ukraine victorious is vital. But I think this is a way of Russia, hopefully, trying to step back from the brink now, but calling it a win when actually they've run out of gas.
Because remember, Putin said to the Russian people, this is just a special operation. It will just take a number of days. I mean, he really did think he could take Kyiv that quickly.
Yeah, and also, you know, some of the kind of narrative of people, even people who are Putin supporters, have been about NATO moving too close to Russian territory, and, you know, this being more of a defence thing, which obviously I think is absolute rubbish. I thought it was interesting that he said that he's taken enough territory, and it almost seems as if it's like a phased kind of strategy, because obviously we started off before with the annexation of Crimea, and then now he's taken enough territory, and then is he kind of pausing to kind of regroup and make sure that he has enough funds? But I think that in terms of President Zelensky, and also the rest of the world, to be honest, that have been helping to protect Ukraine. This will be welcome news because he's been on this massive campaign, obviously, trying to convince people to help him with weapons, helping with the funds. And I think just generally, in terms of people who are humanitarians, we always want to see a ceasefire here and also in the Israel and Gaza conflict as well.
The interesting next step will be seeing what Zelensky says to this, of course, whether or not he says we will accept losing that territory, right?
True.
That's the interesting question.
No, definitely is. Really good to see you both this morning. Joanna and Charlie, thank you very much. Do stay with us. Still to come, we're going to have all of the latest showbiz news, but up next, you'll be pleased.
Yes.
It's almost time for the FA Cup final. We'll be going live to Manchester and Wembley. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So,
it does.
Again, we wish her
What's
very
quite telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. That people forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
I mean, I know who I'd
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far. And it absolutely would have been possible for him to go.
3 miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state. If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, folks, and thank you very much for sending in your questions and about all the topics that we've covered today. Actually, loads of love for Katie, our greatest Briton, who really was. Anton says, "Katie, what an absolute gem." And then Helen says, "What an amazing young lady your greatest Brit is." Elizabeth brought me to tears.
Oh, watching the amazing Katie. Well done, GB News, for highlighting greatest Britons every week. It is our honour, it really is. Didn't we say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is our privilege, and it's always the most beautiful people, and she's been through so much, and she just wanted to keep giving to other people. That's what really struck me.
It is. It's so important.
Just beautiful. And lots of you are continuing to be fans of Charlie Rowley. Marianne says she'd vote for Charlie Rowley.
He was delighted, Marianne.
He was.
He says he's popped his fibre in the post, so thanks for that.
And he wanted to know what constituency you were in as well. So do let us know. I think we know what he might have in store
Absolutely.
for us in the next maybe 5 years. Charlie Rowley, he's one to watch. Now, for the second year running, we have an all-Manchester FA Cup final on our hands.
Indeed, Manchester City will once again take on Manchester United at Wembley Stadium, with kick-off at 3.
Well, let's go live to Manchester now with GB News' reporter Sophie Reaper. Morning to you, Sophie.
Very good morning. Well, it's a very tense morning here in Manchester, of course, as United and City fans have begun the journey down to Wembley. We're just, what is it now, about 3.5 hours till kick-off. So people will be, of course, people have headed down in their thousands down to Wembley, but they'll also be flocking into the city centre and heading into sports bars like the one here behind me to take in this epic game between Man City and Man United from the city centre. Now, as I say, we've been in Manchester all morning catching up with United and City fans as they prepare to make that journey down. There's some real nerves between them. Of course, City looking like the stronger team given they've just won the Premier League. However, United do have form with this kind of thing. We remember, of course, in the Coventry game, they managed to steal that win right at the end there. So there are some very, very tense faces, or there certainly were here in Manchester this morning as the fans boarded the coaches ready to make that journey down to Wembley. Police warning them, of course, to take separate routes down to London to prevent, A, to prevent any trouble, but B, to prevent traffic build-up. So we caught up with some of those fans ahead of that journey down to Wembley. Here's what they had to tell me.
2 City, 2 Haaland, 1 Foden and 1 Bernardo Silva.
Oh, I think we've got to get it, Man United. We've not had a good season. We want the excitement.
The way they've been playing, I'd say 50-50.
Bit nervous and what have you. Not had a great season, but we weren't doing great and we still beat Liverpool a few weeks ago. So anything can happen in 90 minutes, can't it?
It's Derby Day. I'm always nervous on Derby Day. Obviously, the added pressure of it being an FA Cup final.
Brilliant stuff. Right, thank you, Sophie Reaper there. Now we're going to head over to Wembley. Yeah, Jack Carson joins us now. Hello, Jack.
Hello and good afternoon to you, well, good morning rather to you, as the Manchester United fans, Manchester City fans, as Sophie was saying, they've been making their way down. They're now trickling down Wembley Way here, heading towards that famous Wembley Arch here at Wembley Stadium. I mean, there really are, those nerves have certainly travelled down with the fans today. I mean, some of the people we were speaking to, it really is too close to call with this one, because it's not only a cup final where you really can't predict them, but it's a derby day as well, of course. Manchester United and Manchester City going head-to-head in the FA Cup final for the second season in a row. You've got to go back to 1885 to when that happened before. And of course, you know, Manchester United fans probably feeling the more nervous here, given their form across the season. Of course, their worst finish in the Premier League, finishing 8th out of their Champions League group, not of course qualifying well into the rounds of the Carabao Cup as well. Manchester City, though, on the back, of course, last weekend of winning the Premier League title once again. Some Manchester United fans have been telling us they're hoping that some of the players got a little bit of a hangover still and that they won't necessarily be on the ball today. But of course, remember what a start it was for City this time last year. 12 seconds in, they took the lead against Manchester United. So if they can get past the first minute, United, they'll be hoping, of course, that they could have much of a better chance here at Wembley today. But take a listen to what some of the Manchester United fans and Manchester City fans have been telling us here on Wembley Way.
Well, now being in Wembley, a fantastic stadium, yeah, it's a fantastic feeling.
We've never been to a final before, so you know, obviously when you go to an event like this, you want to win. But to be fair, we're going to have to just enjoy the day.
If we turn up, you know, I think the players will be motivated. Even if Den Hag is going, he'll want to leave United with 2 trophies in 2 years to keep his stock high.
It's about the defence. We've got to defend well, better than we have done all season.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Thank you very much to Sophie and Jack for those thoughts and the packages there. I mean, they are nervous, and they've got a right to be nervous, Ellie, because Man United haven't been playing very well.
Have they not? And
it impacts, if Man City manages to win this, it actually impacts upon Newcastle United and Chelsea as well, within actually their entry to Europe. So it's going to be a hotly contested game, but also highly watched with a lot of nervous fans elsewhere too.
Lots of excitement in the air today, especially in this studio, coming from you, Darren Grimes. I didn't know you were so sporty.
Well, I mean, I don't play it, Ellie, but I will watch it.
You're across the detail, that's for sure. Well, there's lots more to come on the show today, so do stay tuned. But first, let's get the news headlines with Cameron Walker.
Thanks, Ellie. It's 11:31. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. Michael Gove says it's time for a new generation to lead after he became the latest high-profile Conservative MP to stand down. In a letter to his local party chairman, he says he's made mistakes in his political career, but he'd always tries to be a voice for those who've been overlooked and undervalued. Mr Gove has had a varied career at the front line of politics, from Chief Whip to Education Secretary, as well as Environment and Housing. His departure comes as both main parties continue their election campaigning today. Now, 20 million vehicles are on the move this bank holiday weekend, according to the latest estimates from the AA. There's already severe disruption around Dover, with huge queues leading to the port heading to mainland Europe. The Port of Dover says there's a 2-hour processing time at the French border at the moment and is advising travellers to remain in their vehicles for their own safety. A total ban on smartphones for under-16s could be considered by the next government after a new report by MPs. The House of Commons Education Committee says tougher guidance on phones in schools and at home is needed to protect young people. It says the age of digital consent should be raised from 13 to 16. And despite today's sunny skies, thunderstorms are possible, as well as hail, and they could be on the way later this evening. A yellow warning has been issued from midday tomorrow, with heavy showers possible across large parts of England and the north of Wales. But the Met Office does expect the wet weather to settle into light, patchy showers in time for Bank Holiday Monday, so not all hope is lost. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. I've got some very good news for you. £20,000 has to be won in our Great British Giveaway. You don't want to miss out on that, do you?
No, absolutely not. Lines are going to close this Friday. Here's all the details you need for your chance to win the cash.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Oh, that was very quick, wasn't it? Very quick ending. Now, are pubs killing our spirits? Well, punters are reportedly being overcharged about £114 a year by pubs short measuring their beer and wine.
Yeah, according to research by the Chartered Trade and Standards Institute, 7 out of 10 drinks, that was quite a mouthful, 7 out of 10 drinks in UK pubs are poured short, with beer the most likely drink to be under-poured.
So are we just expected to grin and beer it? You're welcome. Well, we asked the people of Birmingham, and here's what they had to say.
Well, I think it's a shame, but I think it happens. I don't have the means of measuring my glass of wine when I buy it, do I?
Well, it's not really good, is it? Really, you want to go to a pub and you want your pint to top. You want it to be nice. It's just not right, is it? Really? They shouldn't be wasting it as much as they should, and we should be getting more. Us British, we love pints, you know. We need to get the pints in, go out to the pub, get them in.
If they don't put it the right measure, you say to them, "Can you top that up, please?" It's as simple as that. You don't stand for a lower pint than what's there. You pay for a pint, you pay for the pint. You pay for that pint fresh poured. You don't pay for it coming out of a slops jar or anything like that. You pay for a fresh pint.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We're already getting short-handed with everything else we do, and now you're short-handing us with alcohol. It's not the British way, it's not the English way. I'm not standing for it.
It is part of our culture, isn't it? Well, we're joined now by pub landlord Mark Bridgend, who is the landlord of the Dog at Wigan. Good to see you this morning, Mark. I mean, we just heard from the people there. They feel very strongly about this.
As they should. You know, you pay for a pint, you want a pint. And I'm a very committed pint drinker. You know, we try and pour I think every good bar person tries to pour the perfect pint, and that means giving a little bit of head. But if by the time it gets to the guest's lips, it's flattened out, then yeah, they should ask for a top up. I think it's almost part of the English beer drinker getting the perfect pint, asking for the occasional top up.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, why do you think this is actually happening? Is it because pubs around the country are really struggling and feeling the pinch themselves?
You know, our aim is to pour the perfect product every time. We use measures for wine, and we use measured pint glasses for beer. But I'm not naive enough to say that there aren't establishments that are encouraging, their staff to pour short measures to try and add some margin to the game. But I don't for 1 minute think it's rife across the industry.
Yeah, so, I mean, that story there where we had people actually commenting on this particular story, I mean, looking at those pints there, you could have put a flake in some of them, but actually the visceral, I guess, anger at many being shortchanged, that's what people get sort of stressed out by actually this idea that they're not getting what they pay for, right? It's about fairness, isn't it?
Absolutely. The perfect pint should be poured every time. And if it needs a top up, the customer shouldn't be afraid to ask. Yeah, you know, beer's a tricky one to pour perfect every time. And sometimes there might be a bit, you know, some people don't like any head on their beer. And if they ask for it to be topped up, we'll top it up. But I think, you know, the margins that are being measured are pretty tiny in the volume of a pint. But yeah, everyone should be enjoying as many perfect pints as possible in the pubs up and down Great Britain.
Come on then, Mark, how do you pour the perfect pint? If you could do an imaginary demonstration for us in mid-air, that would be amazing.
Lots of politicians are going to be doing that.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Photo ops.
Yeah.
It very much depends what you're pouring and, you know, whether it be Guinness, which is famous for its 45-degree angle before resting it and then filling it up, or, you know, lager, the tap should never touch the glass, and pour it at an angle, straighten it out and give a, you know, a centimetre head. Or you've got real ale, or obviously cider, which shouldn't have a head and should be brimmed to the top of the glass. So, yeah, it's about, you know, landlords training their team, whatever they're pouring, to make sure it's perfect at the right temperature, the right volume, in the correct glass. And yeah, the dog at Wingham, we do all of those things.
Yeah, do you think it's going to be a good summer then, Mark? I mean, the beer and wine industry, do you think it's going to be thriving this summer? Weather dependent.
I'm an optimist, but yeah, look, you're all bored of me saying it. We're living in incredibly tough times, and yeah, we're you know, the whole industry is hoping that the sun will come out consistently and we'll have a strong trading summer. You know, and I'm optimistically hoping that's right, but it's still pretty tough out there. What we could really do with confidence in the consumer and people consistently getting out to support their local pubs and restaurants. Yeah, that's what we could really do with this summer.
Yeah, it's a really good message. Support your local. Mark Bridgend, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. And it is going to be a busy summer in terms of pints, I think.
Yeah, if the weather's good. Yeah, there is, yeah. And a general election.
General election. As you say, we're going to see lots of politicians pouring a pint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark might have to shield his eyes for that one.
He will.
It's often done very badly, isn't it? Do stay with us. Still to come, we're going to be joined in the studio by Showbiz journalist Ellie Phillips. You're going to be in an Ellie sandwich, Darren. He can't wait.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. As we go through the rest of Saturday, there'll be plenty of warm, sunny spells, but we do have some rain across eastern parts of England and also in the west later, as low pressure becomes the dominant weather feature through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers, particularly for Sunday and into Monday. So for the rest of Saturday, we can see it's quite cloudy across eastern England with some outbreaks of rain for parts of East Anglia and into Lincolnshire. And then later on, also some rain pushing into parts of Cornwall and Devon and southwest Wales. In between, some sunny spells, but quite a lot of cloud around in the sunshine, temperatures reaching around 22 or 23 Celsius. But it will be chillier under the cloud and rain. So taking a look at the details for this evening time, it is largely dry across much of Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of rain across the central swathe here. Temperatures on the warm side to end the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunny spells this evening too, so dry for many parts, perhaps some rain later on. And we can see that rain across eastern England, quite a chilly evening to come. And then the sunny spells continuing further south. Through the overnight period, this area of rain pushes further north and eastward, some heavy bursts developing in there and also some heavier rain across northeast England from the weather front in the east. And then overnight we can see it all tends to move its way northward, so a milder night compared to the night just gone, temperatures holding up in double figures. But it does mean a grey start to Sunday morning, outbreaks of rain pushing northwards, but it does brighten up across southern counties of England and Wales, but this will help develop some heavy showers and thunderstorms through into the afternoon. A Met Office warning in force here, so there could be some Local disruption in places, hail and thunder. Temperatures a little cooler.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Thank you for keeping us company. Marianne's been back in touch.
Yes.
She said that she was going to vote for Charlie
Thanks for
Rowley.
updating us.
Yes, when Charlie Rowley stands. We think maybe the next general election if we're betting people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll give it 5 years, I think.
Future PM.
Yeah, well, I think so. Marianne's been in touch saying, sadly, I'm not in Charlie's constituency. She lives in a hard Labour area, but she will still vote Tory, she says.
And DJ hates Man Who. I hate Man Who. 5-0 Man City. Well, there's one prediction.
And Colin says that Grimes is very sporty. He's the perfect specimen of a non-woke generation. So there you go. Colin's a big fan of you.
Yes, well, thanks,
And
Colin.
your sports knowledge, which came as a real surprise to me as well, earlier on, it must be said. He's across it. He knows all the details.
Right, now, speaking of things less sporty, it's time for our weekly dose of Showbiz News. We're delighted, of course, to have Showbiz journalist Ellie Phillips with us.
Morning, Ellie.
Guys, it's kicking off in Cannes. It is kicking off in Cannes, and not the usual way. So Cannes Film Festival is happening at the moment, and usually we find that there's protests on the red carpet, you know, people putting paint on themselves and such. No, this year, it's some big names kicking off, and for one specific reason. They're annoyed that people aren't paying attention to what's going on. So a lot of Cannes, obviously, it's a film festival to raise awareness of the films and see them released, but there are also charity galas, the big one being the AMFA, and they raise money for AIDS research across the world.
Right.
So earlier this week, it first kicked off actually with Demi Moore. So she was presenting and she was introducing a Cher on stage, obviously iconic, and she got really annoyed at people at the back of the room, chitter-chattering, not listening to her big intro, welcoming her on. She stopped. She's like, excuse me, have any of you guys won an Emmy before? I was like, oh, she did not. I kind of love it.
Yeah.
And then, following that, we've got Fergie, Duchess of York Fergie, kicking off.
Yes, we've got it.
Everyone in this room, stop. Did you see? I removed the microphone. Because all of you are saying, oh, I want to go, because where is the next party?
See, to me, looking at that, you're like, wow, that's so awkward. But essentially, what you saw on screen behind her was a portrait of the late Queen. She was thanking a donor for giving that, and that actually raised £400,000 at the auction there for AMFA. And there were people in the audience chatting through, being disruptive. And anyone who's ever, like Ellie, we host a lot of events, and it's really hard when people are chatting in the audience and you're trying to host an event. And I think the issue at the moment with Cannes is there are a lot of influencers and models out there who, I'm not saying that they don't support the charities, but their main purpose isn't to promote films and such like that. So they are there for the networking, they are there for the partying. So when she says, oh, you're here to go to the next party, she's not wrong in that sense. So I think it's maybe a balance of who they're inviting to these events.
But you know what, though? Fair play to her, because actually, she's been ill recently, right?
Yeah.
Looks
Cancer.
great,
Looks brilliant. Yeah, it looks amazing.
She does.
Out there and for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And she went on a bit about the environment and stuff afterwards and telling people to pay attention to that, which is slightly different. But I think it's good. I'm not surprised they're kicking off. And it's just interesting to see that you have these people who are real well, I know she's royal celebrities, but having Demi Moore, having Fergie actually highlight, no, you're here for the wrong reasons. Let's pay attention to what's important. I think it's actually quite a good thing.
Good on there. That's what
I'm in an Ellie sandwich now. It makes my heart go on and on.
Oh, I love
Tell
that.
us about Celine Dion.
Celine Dion will go on. So if you didn't know, Celine Dion, she has a very rare condition called stiff person syndrome. Only 70 people in the UK have it.
How many?
70. It's extremely rare. It's incurable. And what it is there are a few different types of it, but essentially your body goes through either spasms and then it goes rigid. And the only way to kind of like maintain yourself in a way is steroids, Botox injections, stuff to relax the muscles. But obviously for her, she's a performer, she's on stage. If you have no control of your body, it's really difficult. So what happened was, back in December 2022, she came out with her diagnosis and said, I've been diagnosed with this, so I'm going to postpone my tour till spring 2024. Unfortunately, a few months later, she said, no, I'm going to have to cancel it altogether because I'm not well enough to be back on stage. We did see her in February at the Grammys, and now what's happened is the first trailer for a documentary about what she's been going through has been released.
Is the sound man okay? My voice is the conductor of my life. When your voice brings you joy, I get wings to fly.
It's really emotional.
Yeah, a lot of people seeing this, like, I'm in tears already. Yeah. How am I going to cope with the actual documentary? Yeah. Well, not long to wait. It's out on Amazon Prime, June 25th. And it says it will give a really raw insight into never-before-seen footage of what she went through. So she's been filming everything from before her diagnosis up to where she is now, and hopefully her fight back to getting on stage, which is ultimately what she wants to do.
She's so brave to share that.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah, I think it's so impressive when people who don't need to expose themselves in any way, they don't need the money, but they want to do it to raise awareness of these conditions. I think it's really powerful when they do that.
That is amazing. Look, we're really excited about this story you've got for us. Outnumbered is set to return.
If you haven't seen Outnumbered, go and see it now. It's on the BBC iPlayer. There's 5 series plus a few specials out there. But it follows the Brockman family and their 3 crazy kids. This is to mark the 10-year anniversary. They're doing a Christmas special, so we do have to wait a little bit for this, but it's a one-off Christmas special. And I'm obsessed with the synopsis of this. So they're all back together again, all 5 of them. And it says they're going to have a family Christmas, but it's interrupted by fate, neighbours, hyenas and bus replacement services. So I think that's so great. And actually, the interesting thing about this, if you see here on screen, you've got Hugh and Claire Skinner. They're actually in a relationship now in real life.
Are they really?
In real life. So they met on this years ago, back in 2007. They both have different partners. They separated from their partners about 2015, 2016. Then in 2018, they got back together to film a special, and that's when romance blossomed, and now they're together. Wow. So this is the first time they'll be on screen together as a real couple. And the really interesting thing about Outnumbered is it's partially improvised. So it's not like a solid script. So it's really great to see they have good chemistry anyway.
That should be easy enough.
To see exactly. Yeah. So I'm hoping it's like really good this time. So really excited for that one. And maybe it'll kick off a proper full series.
It may well do.
I hope so. I'd love to see it back. And the kids are grown up now.
Kids are all grown up, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see that. And one of them's in the show. One of them's got a grandkid. New character.
Ellie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you as well for joining us this Saturday morning live. Thank you, Darren, for being here as well.
I've loved it. But don't go anywhere though, folks, because Dawn Neeson is coming up next. Ellie, I'll see you again same time next week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. As we go through the rest of Saturday, there'll be plenty of warm, sunny spells, but we do have some rain across eastern parts of England and also in the west later, as low pressure becomes the dominant weather feature through the rest of the bank holiday weekend. Areas of rain, some heavy showers, particularly for Sunday and into Monday. So for the rest of Saturday, we can see it's quite cloudy across eastern England with some outbreaks of rain for parts of East Anglia and into Lincolnshire. And then later on, also some rain pushing into parts of Cornwall and Devon and southwest Wales. In between, some sunny spells, but quite a lot of cloud around. In the sunshine, temperatures reaching around 22 or 23 Celsius, but it will be chillier under the cloud and rain. So taking a look at the details for this evening time, it is largely dry across much of Scotland. Scotland. 1 or 2 patches of rain across the central swathe here. Temperatures on the warm side to end the day. Northern Ireland seeing some sunny spells this evening too, so dry for many parts, perhaps some rain later on. And we can see that rain across eastern England, quite a chilly evening to come, and then the sunny spells continuing further south. Through the overnight period, this area of rain pushes further north and eastward, some heavy bursts developing in there, and also some heavier rain across northeast England from the weather front in the east. And then overnight we can see it all tends to move its way